to show you in this demonstration, there are several steps involved and it may seem complicated, but we'll have it up on the site so you can follow it and work on something similar yourself. This is a technique that's known as breaking out of the frame. It's not something you would probably use in an eBay listing, but it works very well on a sales page. It would work on a blog. It'll certainly work for something like your vacation photographs where you want to make those more interesting to the people you're showing them to. And of course, it'll be an excellent technique if you're a scrapbooker. So what we're going to do here is start with just a plain background layer, and I'm going to select the part of the killer whale that I want to break out of the frame. Now there's several selection tools that we've looked at, and the one that will be best for your picture might change depending on the background. Because there are so many different tones and elements going on back here behind the whale, using the magic wand won't really work for me. Instead, I'm going to use the lasso tool. And I'm not going to use the regular lasso. I'm going to use the magnetic lasso because there are very good edges between the killer whale and the water. There's good definition and lots of contrast. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so I can see where I'm working. And then I'm going to start by just clicking once here on the flipper. And I'm going to let Photoshop Elements do most of the work of laying down the points. When I'm ready to change directions, I click once with my mouse to lay down a point so it doesn't get lost. But otherwise, as I said, because there's so much contrast and so much good edge on most of this, I don't have to do very much in terms of selecting. I'm just moving my mouse along. And if you've been experimenting with your lasso tool between classes, you probably know the magnetic lasso in a situation like this is really excellent for holding on. Now down here, I'm not being very careful. I'm just going across. I didn't care that I dropped some water into the whale. I'm a little more careful again on the flipper. I'm almost done, so I'm going to click twice to finish the loop. And you can see now we've got a pretty good selection here. You can tell with the what they call the marching ants, those lines that go along. That's the area that's been selected. Now what I'm going to do is copy that selection onto its own layer. And there are several ways to do that. I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Control-J. And if you look over here, you see that we have a new layer, and just the part we selected came out. You can also do that up in the Layers palette. You go to Layers, New, from Copy. Everything has more than one way to do it. If you're interested in learning the keyboard shortcuts, we have them up on the blog in the ebook section, and they're just short PDFs. It would probably help you to copy those, so to download and keep a copy of those nearby. Now on this new selection layer, I'm going to take my marquee tool, and I'm going to draw a box around the area that I want to keep, that I want the whale to be jumping out of. It can be hard to know exactly where to put your marquee tool, so don't let go of your button if you if you don't like where the box is and you haven't let go of the left mouse button. If you hold down your shift bar, you can move the marquee all around the place. So I'm going to move it down this way a little bit and extend it a little, and then let go. Now you'll see we have the marching ants here on the marquee. Actually, I don't want that there, however, so I'm going to deselect it, and first I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to put the marquee tool on its own layer. So sorry about that. So here's my marquee tool again. I'm moving it a little teeny bit. And now the marquee tool is up here on layer 2 by itself. You can't really do anything with this area because it's in a transparent area. So what I'm going to do is come up to Edit, Fill Selection, and I'm going to fill that with black. So now we have this little black rectangle in front of the killer whale. We're doing that so I can transform it. So now I'm going to add Image, Transform, Free Transform, and you'll see some lines have come out along that selection up here on Layer 2. You cannot do anything on a transparent layer. Photoshop will tell you no pixels are selected. Because they're transparent, you can't select them. So if you want to work on a transparent layer, you have to give it a color first. Now I'm going to change the perspective on this square, and I'm going to do that by holding down the Control key and then grabbing the corners. And what I'm doing here is really just trying to make this square that we put on look a little bit like a piece of paper that's at an angle. It's not just laying flat on the photograph. So that's pretty good. So I'm going to use that, pull it down a little bit. It's up higher than I want it. And actually I'm going to pull it out a little bit more too. So this is supposed to give you sort of the impression that a piece of paper is at an angle here. And you'll see why in a second. Okay, so now we've done that. Now that I've made that selection, I'm actually going to just throw away this, and I have to verify that I'm done. I'm going to just throw away that background layer. All I wanted to do was change my marquee to this funny shape, and I couldn't do that without it being on its own layer, and on its own layer, which is transparent, we had to change the selection. So just trust me on this. Once you throw it away, the selection remains. Now what I'm going to do is come down here to the background, and this selection will also be on the background. And once again, I'm going to hit Control-J, and you'll see we've copied via selection to its own layer. And you can see it here. So far, we're seeing, because of the transparency, we're seeing the whole picture, but each layer has just a little teeny piece of the picture on it. Now I'm going to create a new layer. I want that below the one we just created. So we've got the background layer, a new layer, and the two copy parts. The new layer, once again, I'm going to go and fill the selection. This time I'm going to fill it with white. Now get ready for something startling. We've got at least it's startling to me, we've got the killer whale jumping up out of the pool here now. Now the next thing I want to do is put a kind of a frame around this so it looks a little more like a photograph. There's a number of ways we could do that, but the simplest one, since I haven't selected anything else, is to go up here and Control-click and just reselect that area. Now I'm going to go to Edit, Stroke, and I'm going to, white won't work obviously because we're on a white background, so I'm going to use a slightly yellowish, beigey kind of thing to make the outline. And the width in pixels, you'll have to experiment with a little bit on yours to see, because it'll vary depending on how big the picture actually is. So the color and the pixel width can vary. What you'll keep the same is that you want the location to be on the inside. Center and outside will change the appearance of the frame. You want it inside, so you put it on the inside, and now it looks a little bit like we have a frame around this, but you see the whale is in front of the selection. Okay, now I'm going to make another selection, another new layer. From that selection, this time I'm going to fill it with black. And don't worry that it seems to be in the way or it's messing with the whale. this is actually going to become the shadow. So we're going to go up to Filters, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're going to blur it to somewhere in the neighborhood 35. That should be plenty. And then I'm going to pull it down below the photograph. Now you can't see it here, but if you come up to our selector, we can find its box, and we can move it. And once again, I'm going to hold the Control key, and I'm going to try and change its layout so it looks a little more like it's underneath the photograph. I'm pretty bad at the shadow. Gotta admit to you, I don't like these shadows. There we go. That's a little better. Okay. And then I'm going to go back here. Going to deselect it because we don't have to keep looking at it. There's my black layer. Gotta okay it. And deselect it. And now I'm going to just come back here. I like to crop things, so I'm going to crop this a little tighter to the picture that we actually made. And what we've done is gone from this, to, okay, let's get all our layers back, to this. Okay, let's try that again. This to this, with just a few layers. And I think you can see how this may not work on eBay, but you can see how it would be really eye-catching on a sales page. Of course, you're not going to be probably promoting SeaWorld or selling large mammals, but you can use this for almost anything. Imagine you were selling mountain bikes and you had a picture of somebody leaping off the page with their front wheel up in the air on a mountain bike, or you had somebody jumping for joy about the bargains you were offering in your twice yearly clearance sale on your web store, and they were coming just leaping right out of the frame like this. And it's really not hard to do. You can do it in 5-10 minutes once you have the steps down. And there's not that many steps. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to go from that to that. So that's called breaking out of the frame. And I think once you experiment with it a little bit, you'll find that it's actually pretty easy to use, and it'll really be eye-grabbing on your website or your blog. And of course, if you're showing people your pictures of your vacation, something like this is going to make them stop and actually pay attention instead of wondering when they can go to the fridge.